Iran has attacked a US military base in Qatar and completely destroyed it with ballistic missile. At least that's what's being reported in the Iranian media. On the ground, though, there is little to see of that complete destruction, as all the missiles were intercepted by the air defense. And in this video, we're going to talk about how is it going to continue now. Are the US going to strike Iran again in retaliation? How is Israel doing right now? What are they doing in Iran? And what are the next steps that we can expect? All of this here in this sitrep about the Israeli-Iranian war. The Israelis have continued their strikes against the missile systems and the missile program in Iran. They've struck a missile factory in Sharut and destroyed a planetary mixer there, according to the reports. Those are used to mix fuel for ballistic missiles. They also kept striking storage sites of ballistic missiles as well as TELs, but they also attack other military targets. For instance, here they are reporting that they struck several Air Force bases and report that they destroyed 15 planes. F-5, F-14 and AH-1 Cobras were destroyed according to their reports. They also struck an IRGC base in Yazd, that's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and they struck the airport in Kunaita that is also being reported. The Israelis also struck the access roads to Fordo, which was just bombed by the Americans to prevent access. Apparently, they are fearing that the Iranians might evacuate material that might have survived those strikes. Now, Iran has struck and they keep fighting on Israel. We have a video here of a Khorram Shar that's being fired. The Iranians have published this. According to the Israelis, 7 to 8 missiles were fired on Israel. All of them were intercepted. Though, according to the Iranian media, this was a completely different thing. We have them here talking about that the Israelis suffered 500 casualties, 300 people were missing, and 200 or more are injured. All of this just out of yesterday's attack. This is what the Iranians are reporting. Now, today, just a few hours ago, Iran has started the Operation Basharat al-Fath. That's the Annunciation of Victory operation. This was a strike against a military base, the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. We have here the images, the video of interceptors being launched in Qatar, where we see them rising up and apparently hitting something at these points. We have a second video showing it from a different angle. Also here we can see the interceptors rising up over the skyline. These intercepts, these intercepts were successful, according to the advisor to the Prime Minister and spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Qatar. They say that this was a violation of their sovereignty and that they think about retaliation. They keep all options open, but at that point we have to say this is nonsense. I do not see any scenario where Qatar is actually going to do something, for the simple reason Qatar is the nation that was housing Hamas, the Hamas leadership, in all the time, and now suddenly they would join a war on Israel's side against Iran. I don't think so. So, of course, they have to say that because it was a violation of their sovereignty. It was an attack on their nation. But as nothing has happened except some interceptors being spent, I do not see Qatar reacting in any military way on this attack. The attack itself was facing the Al Udeid base, which was this one here. On June 9th, we saw that there were a lot of planes here, and on 17th, all the planes had been evacuated. That at least all the planes in the open. So even if the missiles hadn't been completely intercepted, the damage on the ground might have been limited. The soldiers were clearly still there. Obviously, the US didn't evacuate every single soldier, but they likely have bunkers for a case like this. So even if the missiles had made it through, the damage would likely have been limited. According to Arabic media, there was likely another agreement between the two sides like in 2020. There, the the Iranians have struck a military base in Iraq after the killing of Qasem Soleimani by the US military in Iraq. And at that point, the US soldiers were all in bunkers, and while there were some wounded, none of them out of direct hits, out of direct shrapnel hits or something like this. So this allowed Trump to simply ignore the attack and not strike Iran in retaliation. With this now, as the US were warned, as the interceptors were ready, and as the strike was limited, we do not see that anything major is going to happen. According to the reports, the US government, the War Council basically was in the Situation Room to react to that, to see the attack unfolding, but as nothing happened, this should not lead to much more. We have the Iranians saying that they responded with an equal number of missiles as bombs were used. So they used 14 missiles and they only attacked one base. Obviously, 14 missiles that were intercepted after a warning are a whole different level than 14 GBU-57s that hit their targets. But that's a different story. It allowed Iran to strike back and to show strength while preventing a further escalation. Still, though, we have Fars news agency reporting that Al Udeid has been completely destroyed by this attack. Well, I guess it didn't. Then we have additional information about the strike by the US against the Iranian nuclear program. The New York Times has written a report about it, and according to that, Trump already made the decision to strike Iran on the 14th of June, the second day of the war. He already decided then to strike Fordo, but his social media usage has been the biggest danger for OPSEC, so basically to keep it secret. This is the tweet or the message on Truth Social that the Iranians should evacuate Tehran. This was him leaving G7 not to make peace, but according to him, to do something much, much bigger. This forced, according to the New York Times, the Pentagon to send B-2s in the western direction over the Pacific towards Guam to distract the public, to keep the tactical surprise in this attack, as Trump had basically announced to the world that the attack was to be expected. So to emphasize this, it was necessary to send expensive bombers on a joyride simply because Trump couldn't keep his Truth Social tapping away his messages on Truth Social. He had to keep posting about what was to be happening. This might have had some additional consequences. We have here another New York Times report. The officials also said that it appeared Iran had removed equipment, including uranium, from the site. So as everyone was expecting a US intervention. 1 week ago, I posted a video that I'm really convinced that the US are going to strike Iran. This was obviously not just me expecting this. The Iranians were reading between the lines as well. This allowed them to evacuate something, the uranium, the highly enriched uranium, but probably more as well. I made a video yesterday about the aftermath of the strike. I'm going to link it to you here. There I'm calculating the numbers, how long the Iranians would need and how many centrifuges they would need to create enough highly enriched uranium to create nuclear weapons. And in Fordo, as I've learned by now, there weren't just IR1 centrifuges, but the IR6 centrifuges as well, which are far more modern and 5 to 10 times as efficient. So when you watch that video and see my calculation, think that in theory it might be 10 times as fast as I mentioned here if those IR6 centrifuges were evacuated, which on the other hand seems likely. So possibly because of Trump posting on social media, this allowed the Iranians to evacuate both uranium as well as centrifuges, so the nuclear program might not be dead at all. Then we have further informations from Israel. Israel has struck the entrance of the Evin prison in Tehran, according to their reports. This is where opposition figures are being held. I have not seen any report that there were any that anyone managed to flee from the prison, which seems kind of logical because it would require them to be in the courtyard and thus being able to flee out after the bombing of the entrance. The prisoners are likely in their cell blocks and locked in there, so the damage at the gate can be repaired. But I guess this was more a symbolic strike to show to the Iranian public that Israel is supporting the opposition. I guess we should read it as something like this, but the actual effect will have been limited to non-existent. From the political sphere, we have some weird messages as well. Russia has denounced the attack on a sovereign country. Lavrov said that there'll be worldwide chaos if every country is simply interpreting the right for self-defense as it wishes. This is obviously not missing out the irony of hearing this from Russia after its invasion of Ukraine. And Medvedev, the former president and current secretary of the National Security Council in Russia, is hinting a number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear weapons. Now, obviously, from Russia and China, this is not to be expected. And theoretically, there might be a possibility that North Korea is delivering, but even that seems highly unlikely, as the origin would be traced and there would be significant repercussions with North Korea, but we'll have to see in the end. There were already rumors that North Korea might have delivered or might be delivering weapons, but so far it's just rumors. In the end, we'll have to see. Now, let's talk about the consequences. The US intervention in the Israeli-Iranian war is probably over. With this attack being mostly for show as the one in 2020, mostly aimed at the domestic audience and somewhat at the international, with the Iranians limiting them to 14 missiles and emphasizing that's the same number as the bombs that were used against them. We see they meant this to show everyone, okay, we are willing, we are daring to attack the United States, but at the same time they made sure that they will not do damage that forces the United States to strike back and thus escalate the whole thing. This means it's likely that this was the last strike of the US, except of course if the nuclear program turns out to progress, except that if Iran turns out to actually possess an operational nuclear weapon fairly soon, then obviously the cards have to be reshuffled. But as of now, it seems likely that this was it. This means very unlikely that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be closed, very unlikely that there will be terrorist attacks. The Iranians had threatened the United States prior to the strike that they could use their sleeper cells for attacks in the United States, for attacks against American citizens, for attacks against Jews. All of this seems less likely now. Of course, I guess the Jews would still be in danger by Iranian terrorists as they are associated with Israel from Iran itself, but the sleeper cells will likely not be activated in the same event. So probably the US-Iranian strikes are over with this now, as said, depending on if something is continuing. But this also means the likelihood that Iran will be forced to give in because the US have intervened is dropping dramatically. Now, Israel wants the US to get fully involved in this war. They want the awesome US firepower that is currently in the region, which is the strongest concentration of US military might since 2003 in that region. They want that to be unleashed fully against Iran, but this is likely not going to happen now. So Iran will continue being bombed by the Israelis, but that the Israelis can solve the issue with this seems less and less likely. The war goal of the Israelis is a finite end for the Iranian nuclear program. Trump has said the same, that he demands that. The European foreign ministers have supported this, that Iran should give up on all enrichment. But how can Iran be forced if bombing their military, if bombing their symbols of power, if bombing the nuclear program does not solve that, does not force it? Iran cannot be forced into a capitulation unless its domestic population, its population forces the government to give in, or unless an invasion is happening, and that is not going to happen. The Israelis can't, and the US won't. So we'll have to see how that continues. It might not lead to a conclusion. I do not see Israel being able to force the Iranians on their own to give up on the enrichment. So we'll have to see how that is continuing, and that will obviously also mean that Iran is likely going to continue its nuclear program. So it might have been slowed down, but to how much we'll have to see. As said, I made in the video yesterday, I did some calculations what could happen if Iran didn't just rescue the 60% enriched uranium, but also some centrifuges, if it has centrifuges left. And now it seems increasingly likely that this might have happened. The video is linked here, so if you're interested in these calculations, you'll see we might still see an Iranian bomb despite those strikes sooner than we have expected, but this is speculation as of now. Yeah, that's it for now. So we'll see how it keeps going. The Israelis will keep striking Iran, but the US are likely not going to join in anytime soon again, unless there's a nuclear breakthrough on the Iranian side, but we'll observe this here on this channel. If you like this sitrep, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment if you have something to add, and if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description, but that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.